Oops. Well, hi everyone. I guess we're live. I decided to do a quick live stream basically as a test because I'm doing office hours tomorrow night as of recording. If you're watching this later, it probably won't be tomorrow night. And I got in my head that I wanted to share some underappreciated, what I think of maybe underappreciated book series. And I'm only going to share a few because I'm not going to take up a ton of time. I just got to be in my bonnet about doing this a few minutes ago. So I want to share just a few of the series for young readers that I think deserve a little more love. And some of them I have copies of here and some I don't. I'm just going to mention. So one of the series that isn't even in print, and HarperCollins, if you're watching this, please bring this book back. This series by Mary Stoltz, there was a dog on Barkham Street, a bully on Barkham Street. There was like a whole series of it. Look, I got an old library copy and it came with a card. Seriously, I think all books should come with a card. So, I mean, I would pay extra. This one came from the Beaver County Pioneer Library in Beaver, Oklahoma. It means more to me that way. So this was originally published in 1960. And like I said, they've made she wrote some more in this series and they're out of print now, but you can find old copies for a few bucks on eBay or thrift books or wherever. I'm sure that's where I bought this one as part of my operation buy back all the books I had as a kid that my stepfather threw away. And I love this series. They're about a boy. And I think I just have to say that even though I've written on the blog about why it's important for boys to learn to read books with girl protagonists, like this is an issue. Girls are more likely to read books written about boys than boys are willing to read books about girls, which I think really is a problem. But in any event, it is good to have books with diverse protagonists and that for kids to see themselves mirrored in the protagonist. And so to the extent that there's a kid who likes dogs, who's a boy, they're mirrored in here. So this is this boy who lives on Barkham Street and he has a dog and his name is Edward Frost. And I just love the way this book starts. Let me read you the first line and you'll see why this is such a great book. Edward Frost, who had his share of problems, didn't see how he'd ever solve the biggest one. And I just love that, who had his share of problems. And it just sets it up. It's a great book. It's one of those books that has some illustrations, pen and ink through it, which kind of give me those Charlotte Webb, Stuart Little vibes of like the old Garth Williams illustrations. There aren't a ton of them, but there are some. You'll see they're so cute. There's something about knowing there's a picture every now and then that just makes it great. Anyway, this series, A Dog on Barkham Street, Bully on Barkham Street, all of these are terrific. Another series I think doesn't get its due is basically everything else written by Ellen Montgomery except Anne of Green Gables. The Anne of Green Gables series, I think, gets all the love. And some of her other books, and she even has other series, are so good. And this is just one of her books that I have. Hello. Thank you for joining. And like, I just decided to do this. I'm like, I just had Achilles surgery. So I have a knee scooter with my leg propped up. So if you're joining in, and Dr. Sarah Bolster, I'm just going to give you a hello. Thank you for joining me. But these books by Ella Montgomery, as she matured as a writer, some of these are just treasures. So if you loved the Anne of Green Gables series and you have a young reader in your life, then maybe you could try some of these. Pat of Silverbush is such a great book. And on the back of this particular cover, which I love it, like I own multiple copies of the same book just because I like to have different covers. But on the back of this one, they have this little slurb. What do they call this? A blurb, not a slur. That you won't want a slur on the back of your book. Okay, on the back of this, it says the Pat books are right up there with the Anne series at the top of Montgomery's list of works. Totally agree. If you haven't read the Pat books and you liked Anne of Green Gables, or even if you didn't, there are people who might like the Pat books who didn't love Anne of Green Gables, but these are underappreciated. And now that they're being released in these super adorable covers, I mean, okay. I can't believe it's been 20 years since this was released. So, The Tale of Emily Winsnap. And in the interest of full disclosure, this particular copy was sent to me by the publisher in exchange for my honest review, which I already left on Goodreads. But I can't believe it's been 20 years since these Emily Winsnap books came out. And there aren't that many in the series. I think there are 9. I'm pretty sure there's 9. And that's not a huge series. And that's a good range, at least enough. I think if you get a series for young readers that only has 4 or 5, that's not quite enough for them. I think 9 is good because a lot of times kids will just plow through these so fast that if there's only 3 or 4, they get through them before they really like get into it, right? So The Tale of Emily Winsnap is obviously this play on words right here with tale, because she's a girl who discovers in this volume, in this first book in the series, that she's actually a mermaid. She is the daughter of a merman and a human, and she's actually like part mermaid, part human. When she's in the water, she's a mermaid, and she discovers this inadvertently in the middle of a swim class. And one of the reasons that I love it is because, as you know, I'm a specialist in gifted ed, and this has so many parallels to discovering giftedness, to fitting in, to being embarrassed of your gift, to trying to hide your gift, to having received your gift from your parents, but they don't really acknowledge their own gift. And so it's got all those gifted vibes that I really love. So the book has a little mystery in it. It's got a great friendship in it, and that desire for a best friend that I think so many middle grade readers love. This deluxe edition, I have to say, is gorgeous. And again, the publisher sent it to me, but look at how the edges, it has sprayed edges, which I don't know how I feel about this, about how I feel about sprayed edges in general, but here it totally works. And like it's gorgeous on the side. It also has this ribbon bookmark. I'm a total sucker for a ribbon bookmark. And it also has some extras. It's got like a note from the author about how it started and basically an acknowledgement of 20 years. So this Tale of Emily Winsnap is it's in a weird time where I think kids who are at the age to read it now, their parents are too old to have read it. And so they missed it by a few years. And so I think it's worth mentioning if you haven't read this Emily Winsnap series. Really good. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some oldies. And the next few I don't have copies of. So if I were like a really good booktuber, I would have found pictures of them and inserted them. But I'm not. So I'm just going to talk about them. The series that I recommend that I think are underappreciated are The Littles, which is about a family of very little people, but they also have tails. So they're almost animals, but they're like anthropomorphized animals. They're almost human. And they get into lots of scrapes, but they always come together as a family. And The Littles are a delight. They're a very, very slender book, and all of them. And because every book in this series is very short, they make perfect chapter book introductions. They've got that same pen and ink illustration thing going on. The Littles series is dynamite. Absolutely love it. I have a little free library in my front yard, and whenever I have little copies of The Littles or any of the little books in there, they fly out of there. Kids love that Littles series. Additionally, other series about that same level of reading that I recommend are Encyclopedia Brown and The Great Brain. Both of those. Now, The Great Brain are thicker, and Encyclopedia Brown is a little thinner. I think these are so wonderful, and Encyclopedia Brown is just another one that's perfect for gifted kids. So those series, I think, are really fantastic. Now, there are some very old series that I love, like the Happy Hollisters. The Happy Hollisters have just come back into print, and so now you can get them for, and they're being reprinted by the the son or the grandson of the original author. And so they're staying true to everything, and their Instagram account is straight fire. But the Happy Hollisters is a series of books that are mystery books, and they're about a family called the Happy Hollisters. And they solve these mysteries together, and they're so fun. And I do have these books, actually. Hey, Steve, can you bring me a couple copies of Happy Hollister books? They're on the top shelf of the bookcase by the front door. I'm going to ask my husband to bring me one. I can't get up, obviously because I'm live streaming on YouTube, but also because I have Achilles surgery. These Happy Hollisters books are some of my favorite. They're wholesome. They've got that pen and ink drawing stuff in there. You're not going to find anything inappropriate in them. Okay, he brought me some good ones because all the ones I have don't all have covers on them. This one, The Mystery of the Mexican Idol. So you can see on the back, it has information about all the members of the family. I cannot tell you as a child how many times I read over this. I read over this so many times. They have their kitten, White Nose. You can see where that is, like where she gets her name. And then their dog, Sue. So they have all the people in the family, Mr. and Mrs. Hollister, and then all their children. And so that is the Happy Hollisters and the Castle Rock mystery. These have the shiny, like nice cover. This is one of the ones. It doesn't have the shiny nice cover, and it doesn't have the people list on it, but it does have a list of books, and this isn't even complete. There are so many of these, and I love it. The illustrations are a delight. Like, I feel like mid-century modern is coming back for decor, or is back and has been back, but I think it needs to come back. Mid-century modern needs to come back for books, because you get these great illustrations, you get these great stories. And one thing that people don't talk about enough is that in these older series, the vocabulary is so much more varied than it is, so much more advanced for the same grade of reader than we see in modern books. And like a modern book geared to this age of reader, a middle grade, like even like I would say, you know, I work with a gifted population typically. And so like my gifted third graders for sure, but I would say 4th through 6th, these readers, they're going to get different levels of books, different levels of vocabulary, even in words like scampered, forlorn, things like this. Those are just a couple words that caught my eye in this. And so I think that there's some real advantage here of exposing kids to good vocabulary that you can get with some of these older series that have this vocabulary. Some of it is also just words that are archaic, but it's important for kids to be exposed to them because they are going to see those in classic literature as well. So Happy Hollisters, constantly giving them a shout out. Totally love it. I was recently in an airport that had a used bookstore in the airport. I can't remember now what airport I was in. It was in Wisconsin or Minnesota. Maybe St. Paul. Maybe, does Minneapolis have a bookstore? If you're from Minneapolis, if your airport has a used bookstore in it, let me know. I think it may be that. I was speaking somewhere, and when I got to the airport, there was a used bookstore in front of security. And so obviously I had to spend all my time there. Milwaukee, thank you. Milwaukee. And they had this great used bookstore. I mean, I only had a carry-on. They had a sign at the register that says, only have a carry-on? No problem. We'll ship it for you. Genius marketing. And I picked up these 2 books when I was there. Actually bought more than that, but these 2 were series books. And these were books that I loved as a kid. And you can see I still have the tag from the bookstore here. $5. Probably didn't cost $5 when it was printed. Okay, so this is Cherry Ames, Student Nurse. And I love these Cherry Ames books. There's so many of them. Cherry Ames student nurse, Cherry Ames senior nurse, Cherry Ames army nurse, Cherry Ames chief nurse. So what a great book pairing. If you're reading The Women by Kristen Hanna about the experience of a female soldier in Vietnam, which, like, don't read my Goodreads review of it if you like it. But if you're reading that, what a great book to pair with it is Cherry Ames Army Nurse for your younger child. Cherry Ames Flight Nurse, Cherry Ames Veterans Nurse, Private Duty Nurse, Visiting Nurse, Cruise Nurse. I'd like to read that one. Boarding School Nurse. It goes on and on. Rural Nurse, Staff Nurse, Companion Nurse, Jungle Nurse. And Cherry Ames, The Mystery in the Doctor's Office. I mean, if somebody wrote a book called Mystery in the Doctor's Office now, it would be like disgusting. So I love these. Ski Nurse Mystery, Cherry Ames Ski Nurse Mystery. I'm here for the Cherry Ames Student Nurse series, that whole series. And one of the things that you find is some of these old books have that smell of old books. Now, I would say these are a little bit older, skew a little bit older. I think I started reading Cherry Ames in 6th or 7th grade. They don't have any illustrations in them. At least my copies don't. A little older, but super, super great series. And then the next one are the Trixie Belden series. This was that whole genre of mysteries that were basically like pulp fiction for kids, right? Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, where they were written under one name, but they may have had like 30 or 40 people writing them. If you've read about Nancy Drew and how that happened, you'll realize that the real author behind it got kind of ripped off. But Trixie Belden, again, is with the mysteries. So she's kind of a Nancy Drew-like figure. So I would say this is like one of those perfumes where, like, if you like Giorgio, you'll love this. If you like Nancy Drew, you'll love Trixie Belden. And I think they're really great. There are something like 40 of them. There are so many. So I think the thing that got this in my mind was that as the time that I'm making this video, the author of the Sweet Valley High series just died. She was in her 90s and she passed away. And I just thought about how when a beloved author dies, it's just like a part of your childhood kind of goes. And every now and then I search for authors who I loved as a child just to see if they're still alive, you know? And there have been times when I found out that a beloved author died that I genuinely grieved. And it was her passing that made me think of this, of doing this and talking about these series. These were originally published. They actually have some illustrations in them, if I remember correctly. And let me show like this, like these old ones. They have been like republished. And so this is not the original one, but look, it has somebody's name in it. I just love it so much. She probably lives in Milwaukee. And the Trixie Belden series, Horses, Wholesomeness, Hometown, Little Mystery, so great. So those are just a few of the underappreciated series. I hope that if people watch this later, they'll throw some suggestions in the comments, because I think series books are gateway drugs for young readers. Most young readers, if you ask them what got them into reading, it's series. It was Harry Potter for one generation. It was the Rick Riordan Lightning Thief, that Percy Jackson series for another group of readers. It was Hunger Games for a different group of readers. And series books just have a power where that relationship with the reader gets so deep and so developed, where you truly fall in love with the characters. They come to life for you. They become your family almost. They become friends, right? Like that quote, books are friends that never fail me. And I think for our young readers who are avid readers, series books can play a special role in their maturity, in their coming of age, in their growing up, as the characters that they love, the characters whom they love, as they go through challenges and they recognize it's a form of bibliotherapy, right? In the description box, I put in links to, if you're on YouTube, in the description box, there's a link to where Amazon lets me curate a bunch of different lists. And I have a whole section just for series. In fact, you know what? I should pull that up right now and see if there's any that I've put in there that I did not, that I didn't name here, because that would not be good. Okay, book series. Okay, oh yeah, all right. I got some more. The Anastasia Krupnik books by Lois Lowry. Those are good as well. The Land of Stories, another one. Five Little Peppers and How They Grew. Oh, that's a good one. You know what else? I didn't mention are the Ramona books, but I'm really talking about ones today that are underappreciated. And I think some of these are really well known, but maybe not the Moffats. So Eleanor Estes wrote a series that are about the family of the Moffats, but they're not all called the Moffats. Like one of them is called Ginger Pie. And I think that series, it's an older series. And I think maybe it doesn't get the love it deserves. For very young readers, like if you just want to get a very young reader, like a first grader into a series, the Little Bear series by Elsa Minerick is so good. And then also, like obviously like Junie B. Jones, but again, I'm focusing on ones that are underappreciated. Let me look and see. Oh, okay. Okay. Last one, I promise, are the Mrs. Pigglewiggle books. Mrs. Pigglewiggle, that series, underappreciated, kind of forgotten. So the Little House on the Prairie, Sarah. Yes. Okay. I love the Little House on the Prairie series. I would say, I don't know that a few years ago, up until a few years ago, I wouldn't have said it was underappreciated, but a few years ago, it got attention and a bunch of people tried to cancel it. And that really annoyed me. And so I think maybe it deserves some dusting off. I will say I've recorded an entire video about the Little House series and about each book. I go through each book, the order I think you should read them, the order they come in, when, like which books are good for which readers. So I'll go back and edit this description to add that. But 100%, the Little House on the Prairie books. Yeah, there. And I think, Sarah, you're probably remembering like what it was like to read them, you know, and you just love them. And I recently bought myself the hardcover books. I like saved up and bought this series in hardcover. And it's something I've wanted all my life, ever since I was a little girl. And so it just feels like so amazing to me. And I have it on top of the dresser and just look at it every day. I just love those books. So yeah, the Little House on the Prairie is so good. One thing about Little House on the Prairie that I think is underappreciated is that people associate it with Laura Ingalls, and they forget that Farmer Boy has a male protagonist, is a good one. So I haven't finished. Sarah asked if I finished reading Little House on the Prairie with my granddaughter. I haven't finished yet. We're reading two books at the same time. We're reading Stuart Little and Little House on the Prairie, and we're watching the Little House on the Prairie too. And so it's a lot at one time. And because I had surgery, she hasn't been over as much, but we are going to keep doing that. Shelley says, I'm 67 and I've read this series many times. I'd love to read them at Christmas. Yes. Nobody does Christmas like Laura Ingalls Wilder. The scene in Little House in the Big Woods, when all the cousins come for Christmas and everybody's like sleeping on pallets on the floor, that is such a wonderful one. But then I think the Christmas of all Christmases is in Little House on the Prairie. I have goosebumps. I have literal goosebumps thinking about it right now. On Little House on the Prairie, when Mr. Edwards puts the packages on top of his head and walks across the river to bring them their Christmas, and they don't think anybody will get there. And it's just, and they're so happy with so little, you know, like there's so little in their stocking. There's also another scene. I don't remember which one this was. It's either By the Shores of Silver Lake or The Long Winter. I think it might be By the Shores of Silver Lake. Shelley, you may remember. It's a Christmas where they go to a church for a Christmas service, and there's a Christmas tree there, and there are presents tied to the tree. And Laura and Mary each get like a muff, like, you know, that you put your hands in. And Laura's kind of envious of Mary's. And I think one of the beautiful things about Little House on the Prairie is that Laura is an imperfect character. And Laura Ingalls Wilder reveals her as such. And I think that's the beauty of these series books, is that as they go on, you get to know the characters, and you know their foibles, you know their flaws, and in learning about their flaws, it becomes okay to have your own flaws and to see how those flaws affect the character and the people around them, and how the character sometimes resolves to do better and what happens there. And it's just such a great thing for young readers. So thank you so much for joining in with me on this impromptu live stream with book series. And again, I hope if you watch this later, you'll throw any ideas you have in the comments of Underappreciated Book Series. And if you want to see my whole collection of book series, the link to that curated page is in the description box in the YouTube channel. I'm not sure it's on the Facebook one. I think it's just on YouTube. So thank you all so much, and happy reading. Oh, I will tell you what I am reading right now. I am reading, I have it right here. I have a little basket on my knee scooter that I have to walk around in. I am reading Hannah Coulter by Wendell Berry. I started reading this and realized that it's one of those books where the writing is so good that you have to slow down because you don't want it to end. The writing is so amazing. Yeah, anyway, loving this, and just finished The Women by Kristen Hanna, and I typically really like her, but I did not love that book. So happy reading to you all. Thank you so much for joining me. And again, if you have a book series that you think is underappreciated for young readers, throw it in the comments because I want to hear it.